In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about COHO's Message Center. We'll be covering how to send messages, different types of messages, message templates, and a few miscellaneous items that you'll find really useful. The first thing that we're going to be covering is how to navigate to the Message Center. So from within your account, from your main portfolio page or property page or a room page, at the top you've got a header bar. In that header bar, you've got two little speech bubble icons at the top here. So if we click those icons, it will naturally navigate us into the message center. So just to explain what we're looking at here from within the message center, on the left hand side, this is where all of the messages will appear. And as you can see by the little hand icon that we've got, I can click on any one of those messages and I will be able to see the whole conversation in the center here, plus potentially some more details on the far right hand side. At the top, I'm able to search for a property or maybe search for a tenant. I can press enter and then it will display those tenants' messages or the messages that are in relation to the property. At the top, and we're going to be covering this in a little bit more detail shortly, we've got a blue box there with a white plus sign in it. That is going to enable me to actually send a message out from the system. Just below the search and enter bar, we've got a few little icons here. So we've got messages. These are just generic messages. You may want to send a very generic message with no specific subject over to your tenants. That is allowing you to just look at those generic messages. We've also got maintenance related messages, onboarding related messages and viewing related messages. Now we will sort of highlight here, we'll be clicking into these to show you what it looks like when you've got an onboarding, a viewing or a maintenance related messages. But I will sort of prompt you to go and look at previous webinars that we've actually covered on onboarding, on maintenance and on viewings or tenant find, because you will, by viewing those videos, be able to see that you can actually look at the messages and send them out from the individual panels. This webinar is typically just going to be talking about what it all looks like from within the message center. On the right hand side here, we can look at just unread messages. Unread messages will appear with these little pink or magenta coloured dots at the side, so it's very visual of messages that have gone unread. And we can also look at archived messages as well. So any messages can be archived at any point, and if you do want to recall those archived messages, you can click on the archived icon at the top there. Now at the bottom here, you'll see a little icon. If I click this, it allows me to, it brings up the selectors with all the check boxes there. So if I wanted to mass delete or mass archive any messages, I can also uncheck the ones that I don't want to delete and then, or archive, sorry, and then archive the messages accordingly. So if you do want to mass archive, you can actually do that as well. Now the different types of messages that we've got going on here in the message center, like I said, you've got just generic messages, maintenance related, onboarding related and viewing related. So I'm going to first off take a look at a maintenance related message. So if I click on maintenance, it then just allows me to see all of the maintenance related messages here. And I can click on any one of these and actually look at the conversation. So I'm going to choose this one here at 22 Hawthorne Rise. Now I've selected that message. Any conversation going back and forth will be displayed in the center here. At the bottom, I'm obviously able to type a new message. I can attach files to messages, and we've also got this lightning bolt, which is for quick replies. So we've entered some quick replies in here. You can also edit them. You can enter your own as well, which can be really useful for just sending very quick, short and sweet messages out of the system. Now, because this is a maintenance related message, On the right hand side here, we've actually got all of the information about the maintenance issue. Obviously, like I said, having done the webinar previously on maintenance, you can of course go to the maintenance panel. You can find the maintenance issue, open it up there. You will have all of the information and the ability to send a conversation or view a conversation from that actual panel. But for the sake of today's webinar, just focusing on the message center, I just wanted to point out that you can of course see all of that information from within the message center as well. So yeah, I've got all of the information. I can still, send out to suppliers, restart in jobs, I can defer it, complete it, archive it, so I can still interact with this from within the message center. I don't actually need to be on the maintenance panel. At the top, I've got my title there of the message, which obviously ties into the maintenance issue in this case. I've then also got details. So on the details, I can see when it was created, what time, whether replies are allowed if it's been shared with the housemates, for example, and they're able to actually have a conversation with us as well. And I can also see that it is assigned to David Manson here. Now this will be because the maintenance issue has been assigned to a particular team member. And it also means that if there is any conversation that goes on in regards to this maintenance issue, me as David, I'm going to be the one that gets notified of any messages. It means the rest of the team are not going to get bombarded with notifications about conversations that they are just not a part of. So if you can make them assigned to your individual team members, then yeah, that individual is going to get the conversation notifications. We've then got participants as well. So I can see, because this is a maintenance message or a maintenance issue, I can see that it is between us as Perfectly Prepared Properties, and this maintenance issue in this instance has also been shared with all the other housemates as well. So this is everybody that is able to communicate in the message center about, in this instance, the maintenance issue. If I look at the history as well, you'll also know, if you've looked at the webinar previously, on the maintenance panel, you've got a history tab on the right hand side, which is really, really useful to be able to know when you received particular maintenance issues, if they've been assigned to suppliers, etc. And again, within the message center, you've got all of that information here as well. And again, the ability to add notes. So exactly the same as what it is on the maintenance panel. And then yeah, going down again, it is all of the information about this particular maintenance issue. So that is what a maintenance related message looks like from within the message center. I'm now going to look at what a onboarding related message looks like within the message center. Again, I can do all of this on the onboarding panel. I can send messages, see all the onboarding information. I can also see everything in the message center as well. So I've selected onboarding at the top. I'm going to look at an onboarding here. So again, selecting the message. If there was any conversation, that would appear in the center here. I've got exactly the same options at the bottom for quick replies, attaching files. And again, I've got all of that information about the onboarding, and I can still interact with this. I can finish and close an onboarding. I can send over a tenancy agreement. I don't have to be in the onboarding panel. I can do it all within the message center. And at the top, again, we've got all of the details, who it's been assigned to, so who is going to get notified of any conversation. Participants, again, between us and this particular tenant that we happen to be onboarding. And then again, I've got all my history items at the side as well. So looking at the viewing or tenant find category at the top, I've selected that. So again, I've got all of my messages at the side. And again, I can click on it. I can see any conversation that happens to be going on in the center, same options at the bottom, and all the information about this viewing that is going ahead. Again, I can still see it all on the tenant find panel, can send the messages out from there as well. But again, just to let you know, you can view all of the information from within the message center. So now I've selected the messages. So these are very generic messages. These can be just anything. They aren't onboarding related, they're not maintenance related, they're not viewing related. So this can just be sending maybe just quick messages over to your tenants. Maybe you're doing sending rent review letters, maybe you're sending inspection documents over. Those would be sort of in the generic category. So selecting the messages icon, again, I've got all of those messages at the side here, and I can select any one of these, and then I can see the conversation again in the center. And I've still got a little bit of information at the side here, which is worth pointing out actually. So if we look at the details section, when it's a generic message, it's highly unlikely it's been assigned to anybody in the team. So somebody might be responsible with sending out rent review letters or inventory reports, absolutely anything. So if you do send a message out, you don't want to get other teammates to be notified that somebody has replied to a message, for example, you can actually assign it from within the message center here. And again, we've got the participants section, so I can see who it is between. And I've also got a notes area as well. So if I did want to add any particular notes in, I can also add these on from here. And it's exactly the same options for sending messages, attaching files, and those quick messages that you can also send out. Another thing to note here, when we're looking at generic messages, we have actually seen the odd tenant just sending a generic message that actually they meant to be a maintenance issue. So they haven't gone to their maintenance panel and sent a maintenance issue in the correct way, but all they've done is dropped into the message center and actually raised a maintenance issue with you there. Now, what you can do with those generic messages is actually convert them to a maintenance issue. So if we look at the top here, this is just an example. I'm well aware that it says inventory, but we'd have to pretend that somebody's put in, we've got a leaky tap and it has not come through the proper sort of reporting procedure of reporting a maintenance issue. But you do have some dots up in the corner here. Now, if I click those, and these also appear on all of the other messages as well, so we can mark it as unread. We can also mute the conversation. So if you do find that you're a part of a conversation that actually you don't want to be sort of notified of and you don't want it to appear as an unread message, you can actually mute the conversation there as well. We can also archive the conversation, and then of course the convert. So yeah, if you do find your tenants are raising generic messages that actually it is a maintenance issue, you'd obviously not really want to go back to them and say, can you actually send this through the maintenance panel instead? You can of course convert it yourself from here. It will convert it from a generic message into a maintenance issue. And then at the very bottom, we can of course delete any messages if we need to delete them. Last little thing to highlight at the side here, there is a little icon there that if you click on it, you can look at all of the messages, for example. You can look at mine, so the ones that have been assigned to you, or of course any messages that are left unassigned. So it's also a really nice filtering option to be able to use those on there as well. So the next thing that we're going to be looking at is actually how to send messages. Now, there is a couple of different mediums of sending messages out of the system. So I'm going to be covering those. If you look at the blue box at the top here, this allows us to send a message. So you can send a message to just one tenant, for example. You can also send a message out to all of the tenants in a particular property. You can also send messages out to all of your tenants across the whole portfolio. So if you've got very generic information, so that is quite useful for basically notifying your tenants. Maybe you're out of the office over Easter or Christmas and you want to send everybody a message just to let them know that there is not going to be anybody about in the office, then of course it's really, really useful to send that message out to absolutely every single tenant across the whole portfolio. So the first option that I do get here with sending the message is which property do we want to send the message to. So I'm going to select 4 Bromwich Road, and I can also then select the recipient. So this is me choosing all active tenants, for example, or just one particular tenant. If I wanted to send messages to multiple properties, I can of course go ahead and select them, and I know which ones I've already selected because they actually remain blue, so it becomes quite quick of being able to select multiple properties. But in this instance, I'm just going to keep it to one property. And now I'm looking at all of the active tenants. So this is where I can actually choose all of the tenants or just one of them, for example. And it's also quite useful to see who hasn't got a COHO account. Now that might be that they have not been invited, or maybe they've not accepted the invite. So it's good to keep an eye on this because it will give us a different option when it comes to sending those messages out. So if I go for all active tenants, I'm then asked to choose medium of how I want my tenants to receive these messages. Now, COHO Messenger is always going to be an absolute winner. So if you can invite your tenants so they have access to their My COHO dashboard, they will of course be able to send you a message through the message center. So we've had lots of customers that have come away from WhatsApp in favor of COHO. Because it gives them more flexibility, being able to do things. And it's also very professional to kind of put that barrier between you and your tenants. I do feel, and I have seen it in the past, that when you're using WhatsApp, for example, they talk to their friends and their family through WhatsApp as well, and you're just another person in a list on WhatsApp. So they do kind of have that green light to be able to message you at any time of day, and they don't really think about what they're sort of putting in messages. And it is one long conversation as well. If you're using WhatsApp for maintenance, it's very easy for maintenance issues to get lost, which is why people are massively in favor of using COHO to be able to keep everything nicely automated and streamlined, and be able to actually filter by different types of messaging. So COHO Messenger means we're going to be sending the message out via COHO Messenger. It's worth bearing in mind that there was a couple of tenants there that hadn't got access to a COHO account. And we can see that at the bottom here, we've got 3 out of 5, which means 3 out of the 5 active tenants in this property are going to get the COHO Messenger message. We can, of course, also send an email. We can, of course, also send an SMS. Now, choosing the email option, I'll elaborate on this a little bit more shortly. Sending an email, it does come from a no-reply@COHO email address. However, you are able to put in CC email addresses and reply to email addresses as well. And any emails that are sent out of the system will, of course, still be able to be viewed within the message center. Now, SMSs, yes, you can also send SMS messages out from the system. Obviously, emails and SMSs rely on you putting in email addresses and mobile phone numbers so the system knows where it's sending those messages to. Now, there is a charge for SMSs. So if you do want to have a look at how much our SMSs are priced at, I would prompt you to go and look at your account panel, which is on the main portfolio page. Expanding that panel, and you'll get some further information about our SMS messaging from there as well. Now, I am going to go for the COHO Messenger option because I also do want to think about those other 2 tenants that don't have access to their My COHO account. So clicking on COHO Messenger, I'm going to click Next. Now, it does say here that we're going to be sending it to a couple of tenants via the COHO Messenger with no email for tenants without an account. Now, if I obviously have put in those email addresses for those tenants. We just haven't in this instance, in this account here. It does give me the option to put in a CC email address and a reply to email address, as I said before. So just to let you know what it does look like when you've got maybe 1 or 2 tenants in a property that don't have access to their My COHO account, I've just actually dropped into the instant demo so that I can actually show you what it looks like. So I'm sending to 12 Amber Grove. I'm sending to all 4 active tenants. I can see that 3 out of the 4 tenants have got access, so they're going to get a message center message to view. And at the bottom here, because I have entered the email address in that 4th tenant that doesn't have access to their dashboard, I can also checkbox to email people without the COHO account. Now, if I click next, it gives me those options for the CC and the reply to. I will cover the message templates in just a second, but yeah, I can enter a CC email address in, that is optional. I can also put in a reply to email address, so obviously that is optional, but if you are expecting or giving your tenants the option to reply and they are going to get an email, then obviously putting in a reply to email address is really important. We've then got a subject header, we've got a space to put in a message, we can attach files, we can also preview it as well to make sure that everything looks okay before we send the message out. And then we've also got a few options at the bottom here which are definitely worth talking about. So the ability to allow replies. So you can of course send a message out of COHO and not give your tenants the option to reply. Maybe you're just feeding them some information, not expecting any replies back, or you don't want any replies back. So of course we can uncheck that box there. At the very bottom as well, we've got another checkbox which reads group by house, replies will be seen by everyone. So obviously in this circumstance, we are sending a message out to 4 tenants there, 3 of them of a COHO account. So do we want to make it so that if room 1 was to reply, room 2 is going to see the reply? That is what grouping it by house means. It means it is a conversation between you and all of the tenants. I could, of course, uncheck that and it will just look like individual messages for each of them. So if room 1 was to reply, nobody else is going to see that reply apart from the person that has actually sent the message out of the system. The next section that we're looking at is message templates. So message templates can be really, really useful and certainly save you a lot of time going forward. So I would definitely recommend setting up your message templates so that you can use them going forward for all those messages that you send out time and time and time again. So that it might be elaborating on house rules, it might be rent reviews, inspection templates, absolutely anything. So all of those regular messages that you send time and time again, you can come into the message center and actually set them up. So of course, I said before, we can put in a subject, send a message, that will obviously send it out by whatever medium that you have chosen. But if we want to select a message template, if you've created them, we can check, click in the box here, and it will then display all of the message templates that we have actually created. If we wanted to set up a new one, we can of course click on the plus at the side here, which I will do in just a second. We can also select a message template and actually edit it as well. So it's not currently possible to delete message templates, but if you do want to edit them, you can edit the message completely and you can save it that way as well if you need to edit them going forward. So if I click on the plus here, the first thing it's going to ask you for is a message template name. So this helps you identify in that drop down box of which message template you need to send out of the system. And then there's a couple of ways that you can set these up. So we can choose any medium. So this can be a mixed format. It can be used for any kind of medium. So it can be used for a COHO messenger message. It can be used in an email, and it can also be used for SMSs. We can choose the COHO conversation. So if you want to create a message template that is just specifically for message center messages, you've got that option. Again, we've got the option for sending an email template only and also SMSs. That is grayed out in this instance because we haven't set up any SMS credits from the system. So if we go for any medium, for example, it's going to ask us for a subject, and you can see here we've got a checkbox to use the same subject for emails. If we uncheck that, we can of course put in the CC, the reply to, and actually change the email subject header box as well. We can also enter the message, so we've got a checkbox there to use the same content for emails, no rich text formatting of course, or we can uncheck that and use the email body box to create our message template in there. You can of course still attach files, for example, so that can be really, really useful, especially if you're sending them cleanliness notices. You probably have a house rules document or something like that. I would advise actually in that instance putting it in the welcome packs, but if you need to reiterate information with your tenants, you can attach any files there as well. So we can choose a message template. I'm going to go for house rules. It's a very, very simple one. I've got my subject, house rules and cleanliness. I've got my message in there. Again, I can attach some files. I can preview it, and I've got those allow replies and group by house options at the bottom. A couple of things to note is if you are sending a message out to all of your tenants across the whole portfolio, I know we have that group by house option, which will obviously mean that the messages are seen between the tenants that are in the property. That doesn't mean if you send a message out to everybody across the whole portfolio that everybody can see everybody. It still just groups them by house. Obviously you wouldn't want to share tenants' names in one property with tenants' names in another property, so it doesn't allow you to have a mass group message with absolutely everybody. You would probably just be looking at grouping them by house. And the other little tip that I wanted to share with you, which is what I find really, really useful, I'm going to go for a generic message here and actually look at a bit of a conversation. This is one of the messages that I clicked on before. Now this is really, really nice to know actually, because you may find this really, really useful. So as we can see here, it's a very basic message. We've sent a message to check out an inventory report, and then we've sent a follow-up message just asking the particular tenant to confirm that they've received it, and they have sent us a reply. If you have a look at this message here saying, please can you confirm you've received this, we can see that we sent it, we can see the date, and we can also see the time. Now we can also see the tenant's little profile image in the corner there, and if we hover over it, we can see that this message was seen by the tenant on what date and at what time. Now, this is really useful to be able to see if tenants have actually at least seen your message, even if they haven't replied to it. And it also does not work the other way. So tenants won't be able to see on their side if you have seen one of their messages. It only works for you to be able to see if tenants have seen your message. That pretty much concludes the message center. I'm a huge fan of the message center. I feel like having a proper messaging platform between you and your tenants definitely will help you going forward. It makes it way more professional. Like I said, I do have some opinions on WhatsApp groups. WhatsApp is okay, but if you plan to grow and scale, and especially if you want to put that professional barrier between you and tenants, inviting them from within your account and getting them connected with their dashboard so they're able to use the message center is just going to help you loads going forward. It also means, using WhatsApp if you've got tenants that are reporting maintenance issues and it's all in one long conversation. It can get really confusing scrolling up and down that conversation feed to find out who reported what and when and actioning it accordingly. Again, if you've invited them to COHO and they're using COHO from their dashboard to report maintenance issues, it's just going to keep everything nicely filterable and organized within your COHO account. I will be on this webinar to take any questions, so I do hope you found that useful. Thank you very much.